The Botanist's Reckoning. I remember the day like it was yesterday. The day my world crumbled. The day I was dismissed. The day they laughed at my dreams. I stood in front of the esteemed panel of academics, my heart pounding, my hands trembling, as I presented my research on plant communication. I believed in it with every fiber of my being. I believed it could change the world. But they didn't. They laughed. They mocked. They dismissed me as a naive dreamer. Meddling with nature, chasing pseudoscience. Your research is a joke, Dr. Elara, Professor Harrington sneered, his words cutting deeper than any knife. Plants don't communicate. They don't feel. They don't think. You're an embarrassment to this institution. The room erupted in laughter. My colleagues, my mentors, the people I had looked up to, they all joined in. That was the day I decided to leave. That was the day I decided to prove them wrong. I ventured into the unknown, into the world of urban farming. I had a vision, a dream to create a sustainable ecosystem using genetically amplified biosensors. I was mocked, ridiculed, called a fool. But I didn't care. I was driven by a fire fueled by their laughter, their disbelief. I started small, in a tiny apartment, with a few pots and my biosensors. I worked day and night, experimenting, failing, learning. I was alone, but I was determined. I was ridiculed, but I was resilient. I was dismissed, but I was driven. Years passed and my tiny apartment garden grew into something extraordinary. My biosensors evolved, becoming more sophisticated, more efficient. I could communicate with the plants, understand their needs, enhance their growth. I was creating a revolution, a sustainable ecosystem that could feed cities, heal the planet. I remember the day I decided to go back. I had achieved what I had set out to do. I had proven my critics wrong. I had turned barren lands into thriving ecosystems. I had made a difference. It was time to face them again, to show them what I had become. I walked into the same room, the room where they had laughed at me, the room where they had dismissed me. But this time, I was different. This time, I was not a naive dreamer. I was a pioneer. I was a revolutionary. I was Dr. Elara Vesperia, the woman who had turned the tide of urban agriculture. The room was silent as I presented my work. I showed them the thriving ecosystems, the genetically amplified biosensors, the sustainable future I had created. I showed them the letters of appreciation from cities around the world, the awards, the recognition. I showed them the proof of my success. Professor Harrington's face was pale, his eyes wide with disbelief. How? How did you do this? He stammered, his voice barely a whisper. I smiled, a smile of triumph, a smile of vindication. I listened to the plants, Professor. I communicated with them. I understood them, and they understood me. Together, we created something extraordinary. The room was silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. I could see the realization in their eyes, the understanding, the regret. They had dismissed me. They had laughed at me, but I had proven them wrong. I had turned their laughter into my fuel, their disbelief into my strength. I left the room, my head held high, my heart filled with pride. I had achieved what I had set out to do. I had proven my critics wrong. I had turned their laughter into my triumph. I had turned their disbelief into my success. As I walked away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of poetic justice. I had returned, not as a naive dreamer, but as a pioneer. I had returned, not to seek their approval, but to show them the power of belief, the strength of resilience, the triumph of the human spirit. I had returned, not to seek their forgiveness, but to offer them a lesson in humility, in understanding, in the power of belief. I had returned to show them that dreams do come true, that belief does pay off, that resilience does lead to triumph. And as I walked away, I knew that I had not only proven them wrong, but I had also proven myself right. I had turned their laughter into my fuel, their disbelief into my strength. I had turned their dismissal into my triumph. I had turned their mockery into my success. And that, my friends, is the power of belief. That is the strength of resilience. That is the triumph of the human spirit. That is the story of the botanist's reckoning.